All right, welcome everybody. My name is Marie Baez, and I am an acupuncturist and herbalist and certified neuroemotional technique practitioner. And I am here with my friend Sophia Juarez today, and she is many, many things, but she does so much support with women. And I'm going to let her introduce herself, and then I will introduce what we're going to be talking about today. So go ahead, Sophia.
Hi, I'm Sophia Juarez. I own Alchemistic Wellness. I'm a perinatal massage therapist. I am an innate traditions postpartum practitioner and also a mother circle facilitator. And thanks so much for having me, Marie.
Yes, thank you for coming. And if you missed our webinar about the Mother Circle, we did that last week and it is on my YouTube channel. So if you didn't get that or you can't access it, just text or email me and I will get that to you as soon as possible. And some of the things we're talking about today will cross over. We are going to be talking about postpartum. I'm sorry, that's what we did last week. We're going to be talking about miscarriage today. And Sophia is actually just going to be taking us through her story. We've done this interview before in a different on Instagram, but we wanted to do it this way so it's a little bit more accessible to more people. Because I really think that these things and talking about miscarriage really needs to be talked about, brought to light, the emotional part of how she dealt with it, and also just physically and how her family dynamic, her household dynamic kind of went.
Mhm.
And the care she was receiving from her midwife. Midwives rock.
Mhm.
So glorious. So yeah, we're going to be talking about that, and why I say that it like really links up with postpartum is that physiologically there's a lot of the same stuff happening. And when it comes to Chinese medicine and energetics, you do a lot of the same things postpartum. Very different emotional levels, both very intense. So we talked a lot about the postpartum last week, but you'll see some crossover here. But we really want to honor any mom out there that's had a miscarriage. It is a lot to go through. And so I hope this story that Sophia tells you, and as we discuss kind of everything, that it really helps heal a part of you that maybe you weren't ready to go to, because that it can be a part, it can be a thing that actually just kind of gets covered with a shell, which is okay because sometimes we're just not ready. But I hope that Sophia's story will really be something that will encourage people to reach out more and in their own way. And I love the way you reached out. So this started, how many years ago was this? Through four?
And now it was probably 3 years because my miscarriage happened on my husband's birthday, but it was the same year I got pregnant a few months later with Wolfie.
Okay. Okay. And the reason why I found out about it is you made a post on Instagram about it. And you
Mhm.
were actually scheduled to come in and see me for a treatment, like I think the next day or within that same week. So I
Mhm.
reached out to you and said, "How's everything going?" And you said, "Good." And I mean, that's,
Mhm.
you're like, "I am here."
Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
Really good. I'm
yeah.
like, I'm so glad that you're coming in this week. And when you came in and I was treating you, you just told your story. And um, I remember saying, like, we need, like, this conversation needs to be heard. It needs to be heard by everybody and anybody that wants to listen. Because I think that, like you said, like, the healing is really important. So you
Mhm.
came in, we said this needs to be heard. Go.
So, yeah, so I already had a 3-year-old, and we were kind of like in this space of like, should we try? Should we not try? We were kind of like in that liminal space. And then I was pregnant, and then I decided to, and I've done this. I've also had an ectopic pregnancy beforehand, but I didn't share so early because I didn't know I was pregnant. And so that was kind of a surprise when that happened. But with this miscarriage, I think I was probably like 5 or 6 weeks. And so I decided to share it with everybody because I feel like, there's so much stigma about like holding off until the 12-week mark. And I was like, if a miscarriage happens, I want like my community to know. I want people to know. I don't want to have to be kind of reliving and re-explaining things. I want them to just kind of be me to be able to talk to them about this and not have to feel like there's this in between space of what they think is going on and what actually happened.
Yeah.
So I decided to tell told family, told friends, was like very open and open about it, and also like how early I was too. We were super excited. Our daughter was super excited. And then in March, it's like crazy because I like remembered the date because it was my husband's birthday. It was like
Yeah.
so interesting timing. But I woke up in, I think it was like probably like early in the morning, like 4, and I just kind of felt a little off. And I went to the bathroom, and then I realized like, oh, I'm having like a good amount of bleeding right now. And I was pretty crampy. And I kind of just sat for a second and was like, okay, this could be nothing, could be something. Let's just kind of see what happens, and we'll just see what the next couple of hours show us.
Mhm.
So then I tried to go back to bed, didn't really couldn't really do that.
Yeah.
And so I decided to just like go on my couch and like lay with the heating pad, and I was kind of just like sitting there and just kind of trying to like meditate a little bit and just kind of get into my body a little bit more because I was feeling pretty anxious about it if I was having a miscarriage.
Mhm.
And so then around maybe like, I don't know, 6:30 or 7, I decided to text my midwife, and I text her and I was like, hey, I'm having this like pretty consistent bleeding. I'm like, by that point, the cramping was getting worse. And I was kind of feeling like, oh, I think I am having a miscarriage right now.
Mhm.
And so by that point, my husband was awake. And so we were sitting, and I was, telling him, I was like, I think I'm having a miscarriage right now.
Mhm.
And so, it's something that you don't really expect to hear, like right when you wake up. And so we kind of just sat for a second. And at that point, once I said those words, I just kind of, broke down and just like let grief take over and just allowed myself to have like a really intense, like guttural cry of like, when you have a miscarriage, I think you think of all of the possibilities. And then two, you're thinking about, everybody else that you've told. You're thinking about, especially on that day, it was his birthday. So I was like, we made all these plans, and like all these people are, expecting me and us to be there. And lots of different like thoughts happening all at once on top of just having this like really intense grieving period. And so he just kind of sat there with me, and he's such a he's so attuned to me and like what I need. And he was just like, just relax, like I'll draw you a bath. We'll, let's see, what happens. The midwife's gonna come over. And so he just made me tea. And so then I finally, so then I got in the bath, and I feel like that allowing myself to like fully be in my sadness,
Mhm.
it kind of let me, I don't know if it let me get to another place quicker or if it was just like what I needed to do in that moment. But I got in that bathtub, and I was probably in there for like, I don't know, 15 or 20 minutes, and just kind of sitting with that and like, okay, like things are changing. This is different. And I'm gonna have to, like be with all of these emotions that are coming up and all of these feelings that are coming up. And I was just trying to sit with everything. Um, and as I'm sitting there, I all of a sudden feel this like huge wave of just like gratitude. And it was felt very odd because I was just feeling this state of like immense grief.
Mhm.
And when that wave came over, I was like, oh, how wise are our bodies? And like what a gift this can be as well.
Yeah.
And it was for me, I was like, okay, wait, little like altering because it was very like the pendulum was swinging from one side to the other. And but then I was like, okay, I'm gonna sit with this feeling now. Like, yeah, how amazing are our bodies that they know for whatever reason. And like, I don't get to know because I think a lot of our heads will go to, what could I have done? What did I do wrong? What shouldn't I have been doing?
Sure.
Um, like we have a say over if this baby stays or not, which maybe there's a piece of that in there. I don't know. But at that point, I was just kind of feeling like, oh, this is like something that's completely out of my hands. But like, what a gift to also know that like this pregnancy made us all so excited and that we do want another baby.
Yeah.
And like, that was the gift that this baby, even though it was here for such a short period of time, it really gave me so many things that like I wouldn't have experienced unless that baby came in.
Yeah.
Even though I didn't get to hold that baby, baby only came for a couple of weeks, it gave a ton of real gifts to me.
Mhm.
And so sitting there with that feeling of like gratitude and being in that, I was just like, it just felt so I mean, it felt really odd, but then it also felt like really right. Like, how can we get ourselves to this place of like allowing grief to fully come in and settle and be what it needs to be in our body while also knowing like our bodies are so wise and eh, they know what to do. And so once that kind of happened and I like settled with that feeling, I was like, okay. And it was also like a state of like acceptance. Like I'm having a miscarriage. Through all of my education and the people that I surround myself with in my community, I was like, I know how to serve myself and how I need to be tended to while also reaching out to my community because I know that they will tend to me in a way that I need as well too. And so I got out of the tub and I decided, my husband and I were talking about like, okay, well, should I stay home with Arrow? Like, should we all be here? Should we go out? Should we do something? And once I was like, I think I need to be alone. Like, I think I need some time of just like settling in with all of this and I need some space. And I think I just like need my midwife here. And I want you to like go and enjoy your birthday. And I'll obviously be here when you get back.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Like, so that's what they did. And it felt like it was exactly what I needed. Like I just needed some time to myself to be able to like just be with myself in that moment and like be around people that, could tend to me in very specific ways that are needed during this time because, once you have a miscarriage, it's like you are postpartum, and you need all of those same elements. So I was like, I made sure I had my like heating pad and then, I had lots of tea around me and I, was making sure that I was off my feet and staying warm and doing all of these things that I share with so many other families. Now I was the one to receive those things. And so my midwife Josie came over and it's interesting when people come over or they, want to share with you after you have a miscarriage and everybody comes like at it at their own way and she just like came and just sat with me and she just was like, how are you doing? You know? And it like that, she didn't come in with any expectations of how I was going to be or what I need or me feeling like what I need to share or
Or any
anything.
answers necessarily. Yeah.
Yes, 100%. And so it was just like she was just fully there to receive me in whatever way that I was showing up at that moment. And so then we just sat and we just talked for a really long time. And then she asked me, can I rub your belly? And I was like, yes, that's exactly what I want right now. And she rubbed my belly. And then we also like belly binded my belly.
Okay.
And, I was still in such immense gratitude for how I do have people show up for me in those ways because I know that I show up for people and other families in that ways, and to fully like receive that care was just so, it was so healing within all of that. And also as I was moving forward, as the days went by, starting to tell family and tell friends and, people bringing meals. And, it was like I was postpartum. And I also was like, you know, I was talking with my midwife that day and she's like, we were kind of talking about work. And she's like, are you going to tell people? And I was like, at first I was kind of like, I don't know. And then I was like sitting with it and I was like, yeah, actually, I'm going to tell people exactly what happened because I think I worked the next day or something, or like it was really close to like when I was going to go to, like my regular schedule. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to like tell my clients what happened because like we need to hear about when people miscarry and like how we take care of ourselves and what we do. And I like sent out this email and was like, I'm taking the next 2 weeks off. Like, not everybody gets to do that, right? Like, we all are in our own, place. We all have our own stuff going on. But thankfully, I took 2 weeks off and sent it out in an email blast. I said, I had a miscarriage, taking this time to tend to myself. And that's what's happening right now.
Yeah.
And so, it feels, doing that also felt really good and really healing to not kind of be in the cave like that and to kind of like hide in a way. For me, that felt really accurate. I know for some people that might not be something that feels good at that moment. It might, take however long. But for me in that moment, I was like, oh, I want to share this because this miscarriage also didn't feel, um, it felt like a jumping off point. It didn't feel like a hard stop. It felt like something that baby came through to fully let us know, like, hey, you do want more children,
Yeah.
and you do, so that gift kind of like fueled the way that I, you know, let people hear my story. And then I made that post on Instagram and was absolutely mind blown by how many messages I got from people, also like family members that like, you know, were sharing with me like, oh, I just had a miscarriage, with so and so, and but like very, very like close to when I had my miscarriage. And I had a lot of people reach out and I was like, oh, we for sure need to be talking about this more. And we need to like, when it feels right and appropriate, we need to share our stories, just like we feel, really called to share birth stories. We have to share stories that we are very challenging to us, but also we need to share stories that are positive. Yeah, we need to share those positive stories too. Like both sides need to be seen. We can't only see one. And so it was a really interesting experience because I do tell people that I kind of had like this positive miscarriage experience because I also knew what I needed, and I was able to like ask people to tend to me in the way that I needed. Like my partner was tending to me like I was postpartum. Like we had friends and family like bringing us food. We had people taking Arrow and like going on outings with her because I still, wasn't
Yeah.
feeling great and I needed time to myself. Yeah. So there are all of these things that I had to like call on. And, you know, unless I would have, you know, kind of kept it to myself, none of that would have happened. And so sharing sharing my pregnancy so early felt good because I'm glad people knew. And then I'm glad that I was able to say like, hey, I had a miscarriage instead of them being like, whoa, you were pregnant, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. I wonder, there's a couple of things that like popped out to me in
Yeah.
this movie that you were like,
Hmm.
our bodies are so wise, and you got that like wave of appreciation.
Yeah.
But it's interesting when you woke up at, you said around 4 a.m.
Mm.
So this whole like beginning of this started in the lung time, and when you knew it was like happening, when your partner was awake, that's the
Mm-hmm.
large intestine time, and that's when you were in the bath. So
Mm-hmm.
lung time is between 3 and 5, and then 5 and 7 is the large intestine. And I think you were getting in the bath around that time. Maybe I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. Like early. Yeah. Like around that time. Yeah.
yeah, and lungs are about like grief and mourning and crying and sadness. And they're
Mm-hmm.
linked, they're paired with the large intestine. And the large intestine is about, in the healthy ways,
Mm-hmm.
letting go of things that don't serve us. If you think about it in your digestive system, like the parts of your food that are not good for you and toxic and you don't need anymore, you poop them out. So
Yeah.
emotionally, it's the same thing. So when you were having the grief, you were feeling it, you were moving through that, but you were also using energetic care to that organ, the large intestine, to let go of things that didn't serve you and feel that gratefulness. And so you don't stay in that pattern of too much grief. And I know you had more grief to move through,
Mm-hmm.
but it was moving, and
Yeah.
that's so important. And then the other thing that was that all these remedies and things to do because this is what you teach for postpartum, for miscarriages, of warming, staying warm, keeping your
Mm-hmm.
feet warm, tea, broth, that
Mm-hmm.
kind of stuff. Knowing, I know you're like, should I go or should I not go? And he's like, what do you want to do? You're like, I want to stay. Like energetically, you needed to like come into yourself,
Mm-hmm.
not have to take care of a 3-year-old at the time, not have to take care of people at work.
Mm-hmm.
That is chi energy draining,
Mm-hmm.
especially during those times, especially in a time where you're so open. Postpartum and miscarriages, your womb is open. And in Chinese medicine, if you do not energetically take care of that within yourself and temperature wise, it can cause, further um, um,
Like
cycle
ailments. Yeah.
and fertility problems and different things like that. So warm and not expending as much energy and having people to hold space, like Josie's glorious. Like that's what I wanted to kind of the type of care that you receive when you're going with a a regular a licensed midwife
Mm-hmm.
is like day and night difference. Not saying that going to a hospital and having a hospital birth and having an OBGYN isn't, but we're talking about things that it's built into to what's going on. It's built into the community. It's built into that kind of,
Mm-hmm.
and she knew she came over. She probably brought extra tea too.
Yeah. She brought so much stuff. She had a bag of stuff.
All the things. And it's like homeopathic remedies, like all the things.
Yeah, she had all the tinctures, all the herbs,
Mhm.
all the things,
Yeah,
and
like
throwing them
rescue
up
remedy,
there.
I bet. Like
Yeah, all the stuff, you
And
know?
it's like her job to be knowledgeable because she does attend births and people throughout their pregnancies and postpartum. But also, the energetics behind that kind of care is they know how to hold space for
Yeah.
women
Yeah.
around children, around postpartum, around miscarriage, especially. And I think that's where we really need it. Um,
Hmm.
I had a
Can I say one thing about that?
yeah.
So that's what I think is a really big piece of like having care postpartum with somebody who understands the specific needs. Because I'll talk to families and they're like, well, my husband or my partner, they're gonna be my support and like, and I'm like, yeah, totally. That's great. Or like my family members are kind of come in and they're gonna cook meals and do things and help with the toddler if they have babies already. I'm like, yeah, that's amazing. But there's also an important piece to have people that know what the specific needs are during this time to be able to support you in a very like specific way. Like being postpartum is so specific in what you need. And I mean, even I experienced this. Like, there were times where I was like, I need somebody more than my husband. I need somebody more than my own mother. I need somebody more than like a friend who's just kind of like coming over to like be with me. there was like this missing piece, and it was somebody who's constantly in this world, in this kind of space all the time. Because there's something about when you're in this certain kind of like space with somebody, it's a very like intimate thing for somebody to invite you over when they're postpartum. It's so intimate and like very, you're in your like most vulnerable, one of your most vulnerable states that you will ever be in your whole life. And so that's what like one thing where I really tell people, I'm like, you really do need someone who understands the nuances of what's happening right now because there's so much happening all at once. And your partner might not understand that. Your sister might not understand that. Your friends, the people that you have that are amazing and also like coming to surround you with, but you need people to tend to this experience in a very particular way. And I think that's like where Joseph came in.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of like in life, we can have friends and family that we go to when we have problems, like a therapist, like,
Yeah,
therapy with your family and friends, which I think is really important. You should have people
totally.
to, but at
Mhm,
certain points, you need to maybe go to that third party that's specifically trained to hold that space,
mhm,
to have that knowledge to support you.
mhm,
And I think that when we're talking about postpartum,
mhm.
it has to do with everybody in the family and friends are adjusting into the excitement of baby cakes here, and the mom, um, it's a lot different. It can be a lot different. Like, so like
Yeah,
grandma comes over and she's like, I'm a grandma, like for the first time or a second or however many times, and it's so
yeah.
exciting and all these things. But that excitement could also be not what the mom needs. When it
Mhm,
comes to miscarriage, when you talk about family members supporting you, amazing, but they're also mourning too. They're also
mhm,
going through this too. Now it's different because it's not physical in their bodies as well as their heart and soul. But
mhm,
it's so important to have these people that
mhm,
know how to hold this space
mhm,
for you to come and do that. And not to say that you don't need the friends and family, because you totally need the friends and family, because that person also doesn't know you like they do and also can't be there 24/7 with you, and every part of that support system around you is needed and important.
mhm.
Sometimes little tweaks here and there, especially with postpartum, of like making people realize, like, just no, you're not coming over to hold the baby unless mom needs to take a shower. You're coming over to make sure mom is fed, mom is comfortable, mom is bathed if she needs to, and the dishes are done. That kind
Yeah,
of. And this, I would
totally.
say the same for miscarriage, because I personally have never had one, but I have
Mhm.
had friends and family members that have, and you don't want to go and do, and you don't even want to be necessarily from an outsider's view, because I've never experienced it, and a lot
Mhm.
is held, and so having these spaces is really
Yeah,
really important.
yeah.
um I have a question. With your first miscarriage,
Mhm.
how did that feel emotionally, because you didn't even know you were pregnant at
Didn't
all?
know, yeah, didn't know I was pregnant. Yeah. I we I'll make it kind of short, but it's a we were traveling and we were in France. And I got really sick the day that we were leaving, and I thought it was because my husband made me eat escargot, and I was like so determined to not eat escargot, and he made me eat it the day before we were leaving. He's like, "You have to, we're in Paris."
Yeah, you have
So
to
we
put it.
did. Yeah, we did. And then the next day I got really, really sick, and it was kind of like I had the flu. I just had like body aches and just like had a high fever and just felt horrible. And I'll never forget, I was so nauseous. I actually used one of the little like paper bags that they give you to puke in.
In the
I've
airplane?
literally never seen anybody use them, and I had to use one like literally as we're taking off in the plane.
Oh no.
And I will never forget this mom right next to us. She comes over after we kind of like, we settled, we're like, at altitude. And she comes over and she's like, "Sweetie, I saw that you got sick. Can I get anything for you? Can I help you?" And she's, probably, I don't know, I think she had like an 8 or 9-year-old with her. And I was like, yeah, I think I ate escargot and it just made me feel really sick. And, so she gave me some like nausea stuff that that really helped for that flight home because it was a really long flight. So that was like my first indicator that I didn't realize I was having like something was going on.
Yeah.
And then a week later, I thought I was having my period, and I was like, man, this period is like really, really painful. It's like really feels like really sharp and different. And so I kind of was just like, I wasn't really, I was unsure. I was like, maybe I'm having a miscarriage right now. I was like, this just feels really different than a period, but it was confusing because it was like right when my period was supposed to come. So then I took a pregnancy test, said I was pregnant. And I was like, okay, I'm having a miscarriage. And then I started getting, like after a day, I was like, man, this is getting like way, way worse. And I started getting like shoulder tip pain when I would breathe in. And thankfully, this is the only time I tell people that like I went on a Google forum and it was like, it helped me because somebody wrote that if you're having a miscarriage and you have shoulder tip pain, that means you have internal bleeding. And I like got my husband and I was like, we need to go to the emergency room right now. We need to go to the ER right now. So we went to the ER and I like told them, I was like, I'm having an ectopic pregnancy. I like, like WebMD'd myself, like right when I got in, they're like, okay. And
Like, okay, you have a UTI.
okay. Yeah. And I was like, no, I think that's like what's happening. And so we went in and then everything went very, very quickly. And, they did an ultrasound and then they said that the cells that were developing were in the right fallopian tube and that it was on the verge of bursting and I had to go in for immediate surgery. And so I did the surgery. My right fallopian tube is closed.
No.
Like after I had the surgery. Yeah, now. So after I had the surgery, so everything happened like really, really, really fast. Um, so it that one took me like a little bit longer of like, whoa, I just like went in, had major surgery, and was also pregnant because I was pregnant. And so that one, that took a little while to kind of like settle in and be like, oh, that's like what happened. But with that one too, it was like I kind of realized like, oh, I had major abdominal surgery. I had to like take care of myself. And this was before I even knew this world existed,
Yeah.
So it was like just listening to my body, taking my time, not pushing myself too much, which was just like an inherent, thing. Thankfully, like my mom and my parents have always been really, big on like taking care of your body and like if you're sick, you're sick. Like that's it. You don't have to like push yourself. Yeah.
You can strengthen your body so that when you
At
are
some, yeah.
you're gonna get sick.
So they were, yeah. So always kind of having that in the back of my head too, of like, oh yeah, like realizing I had like major abdominal surgery. And so I just took my time with that. But yeah, that was what, in a nutshell kind of happened with that ectopic pregnancy.
Um, how long that
And
was
I had never heard of it beforehand.
how words
Oh.
how what timeline wise before you got pregnant with Arrow was that?
So think I think it was probably about a year.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, it was like a year before I had Arrow because I was also hesitant because I was like, I just want to make sure if we do get pregnant, like I want my body to be like fully kind of like nourished and like back to a solid place.
Yeah.
But
Which I
yeah,
think
but it was probably about a year.
so two things out of that story that kind of popped out to me. One is if you're gonna get sick, you're gonna get sick. If you're gonna have a ectopic pregnancy, I mean, it's
Hmm.
really callous to say. But what we can do about those things before,
Hmm.
after, during is be as healthy as you can be.
Hmm.
Like you said, be aware of your body. That's the best way to be healthy is be aware of your body. Like, does this exercise make me feel good or bad? Does this
Like
food?
all these simple kind of like questions to ask yourself. Yeah.
When something does happen, when it's something big, you were like, something is wrong. Something is wrong. You took a pregnancy, you knew to take a pregnancy test because of you just tapping in to that.
Mhm.
Um, and going to the emergency room when needed. I last year woke up and I thought I was having an ectopic pregnancy,
Mhm.
and it wasn't. It was like a major kidney stone, and I was septic. That's it
I
was
know, so
it was
crazy. Yeah.
quite a wild ride, but I really thought it was. I was like, this couldn't be anything else but ectopic. It was
Mhm.
this very sharp pain in my
Mhm.
lower left quadrant of my abs, and I was like, that was the only thing I didn't even, because I never have had kidney problems before. But the thing
Yeah.
actually, and I didn't even know that like 75% of people that go septic die, and I didn't, and that like you have a like a 4 hour window to like get in and get treatment. I didn't know this until months later when I was
Yeah.
talking to my nurse friends. But the thing was is that I knew something was wrong and something was off because I'm aware of my body. I do yoga so I can like come into my body. I have a really hard time being in my body, but I
Mhm.
do things to like come back in there. So
Totally.
and so
I
those,
think that that helps when you're in this state of like, you're in kind of like this altered state where you're like hyper aware of your body because something's very, very different. And so it's like you're kind of able to like tap in a little bit quicker because you're like, something's going on that's not normal.
yeah, yeah. And I remember before we knew what was going on and I was in the emergency room, I just remember being like, and it's an ectopic pregnancy and we're losing this baby and we didn't even know we were pregnant. It was just like so, and my husband was like, okay, let's just breathe. We don't know what's going on. We don't know.
Hmm.
So just so that like paying attention to your body. So when something is wrong, you know, and to go and to where to find help. And that
Yeah.
wouldn't be to an acupuncturist or a
Yeah.
massage therapist. That
Yes.
would be
Probably not us, but
the emergency room, and then we are there afterwards to like help support and hold space and say, hey, let's make sure we're doing teas and warm things and making sure you're not overexerting yourself physically, mentally, emotionally, those things. um
yeah.
and then yeah, so I think that that's really important to like understand our bodies so that we're
Mhm.
able to um know what to do next, even if we don't actually know what to do.
Yeah,
um
definitely.
And when it came to when you got pregnant with Arrow, did you tell people early?
Hmm.
Yeah.
I did tell people early, yeah.
And do you think
And
that first miscarriage informed, like, helped you with that? You were like, well,
oh,
because you had to go through the aftermath of that without even knowing you were pregnant, and then like, oh my God, I was pregnant, and then oh my God, I'm not pregnant. Oh my God, I had major abdominal surgery. Like that's huge.
yeah, there were a lot of like big things that happened very quickly, like back to back with all of that, this is like, before I had babies. And so I'm just like, I mean, we were in France. We were like in France for a couple of weeks. We were like doing our thing,
Mine
traveling,
was
like
baguettes.
amazing, amazing. So my headspace on, this kind of world that we're now in, which is like birth work, postpartum work, women's wellness, like all of those things were not at the forefront of my mind at all. But having that experience, it like made me start to dive into those things. And it gave me a little fire in my belly of like, I like just exploring different things. And so it really started to awaken, exploring this whole world. And then, once I got pregnant with Arrow, which it was like it was probably a solid year after. Because I think the doctors also told me to try not to get pregnant within the first 6 months because you have like a higher chance having another ectopic pregnancy within that time. So I think that's why it was like a probably really close to a year when I got pregnant with her.
That amount of time gives you that space to mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually process through that, digest all that, figure out where you stand. And like the silver lining of that was that, like
Mhm.
it brought you more towards what you're doing today and serving other moms and
Mhm.
holding space for them. And that you were like the same thing with your second miscarriage is like, ooh, like I do want a baby cake, like
Yeah,
that's
make
like
me want a baby.
loss. Yeah, I mean, like I was mourning the loss of something that was just a kidney stone. Like, but like I went straight there. I was like, and I'm having a miscarriage, or like, and it's an ectopic pregnancy, like all these things. And he was like,
Totally.
oh boy, you know, like not in a, he was just like,
Yeah.
"Ooh,
Hmm.
I don't know yet. Let's just take it as it comes." He's really,
Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, and taking that time, which is really important. I know working in this space like you do, and working with moms that are wanting to get pregnant and have had miscarriages, it is the hardest thing to ask a mom that wants to get pregnant so badly to wait and
Hmm.
their body and their
Hmm.
heart and everything,
Yeah.
because it's so
It
what was
feels very urgent. You're
urgent.
right. Yeah.
It needs to
Yeah.
be immediate for them. And I get it, and I totally understand that. But it is an important thing to know, this healing time. Time heals everything. And I know that you probably carry these two kiddos in your heart always.
Hmm. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, does it ever come up, like the sorrow and grief come up again? Probably not as
Yeah.
big, but
Not as big, but I always, there's always that kind of thought that crosses your mind, or like what could have those possibilities been with those babies, Would I have had these babies? Would things have been the same? There's like so many different possibilities that come up. But, I always am very like open with my, children that I have in my arms, and like I let them know like I was pregnant before you. And Wolfie's two, so he's kind of like
like,
doesn't
okay.
whatever. But with Arrow, I'm like, yeah, I, was pregnant before you. And then she was like really present. She was 3, so she was like pretty aware. And we tried to like just explain to her as much as we could what happened. Like, mommy had a baby in her belly and now she doesn't. So she has to rest now because it's a lot for your body to go through that. And so, that was the choice that we made. I wanted to be very open with them because I believe that like we lead by example with our children, and I'm not here to like put them in a bubble, but also like, being age appropriate with everything of like the realities of like being a woman. Like most likely you will experience a miscarriage. So I would just, that was another thing too of like, my partner and I were talking because she was 3, but I was like, she was pretty like here with us when she was 3. And he's like, do you want to tell her? Do you not want to tell her? Because we had already been telling her. Or I was like, mommy has a baby in her belly,
Yeah.
and we're getting all excited and like, she's making up names and doing all the things. And now there's like this big change happening where I don't have a baby in my belly anymore. And that's okay too. But we had to like, share with her. And also I think it also kind of just brought her into this experience we were having as a family. It wasn't just me who had the miscarriage, you
Yeah.
know, like it's all of us that had to have some sort of processing with all of this.
And I think that's good too. Like I always, because I do a lot of emotional release work,
Mhm.
um, pregnant moms a lot. And everybody knows, and there's like the books out there, like the body keeps the score, and like the babies feel everything you feel, and all these things. And yes, that's very true. But what I also tell moms is that you're releasing these emotions and not holding them in, and you're like stopping generational patterns, and you are changing, and your baby is witnessing this from the very first cells. Like
Mhm.
they are like marinated in your healing, and it's teaching them how to heal. So you don't have to tell your kids. We're not saying this, that your path is everybody's path, but the beauty in what you did is showing your daughter your emotions and how you process through them, not holding them on, because sickness and disease and imbalances in physical, mental, emotional happen when we hold on to emotions and we don't move. Like we said, the grief is happening, but we were moving, and you were moving through that grief, and then this like washing over of like this gratefulness came over you. Like that is movement and healthy. And so when you're showing your kids that you're doing these things, um, kids energetically know what's going on. They may not be able to put words to it. And later in life, when they come to me and they're doing NET, and I'm
Hmm.
like,
Oh,
"What's
yeah.
happened?" And they're like, "I don't know." I'm like, "Oh my God, that's when this happened." Like kids know. And it, like you said, maybe not put words to it, but to have these conversations and just to be like, this is what happening. Like, I'm very emotive. That's how I
Mhm.
process. Some
Mhm.
people are like, "Whoa, scary. She's a little bit too much," but that's okay. And I was driving home one day and a song came on the radio and I was going through stuff with some family and I just could not stop bawling. It was coming out and I'm like, I'm letting it come out because I can't hold this in anymore. And Rafi was in the back seat and he was like, "Mama, what's wrong?" And I'm like, he's like, "Are you crying?" I'm like, "Yes, I'm crying. What's happening?" I was like, "Well, this is what's," and I didn't like, and
Yeah,
then
yeah, yeah.
that happened and, and this is how I feel about this. I'm like, this is what's happening. And I'm feeling distant from this person and it's hurting my heart.
Mhm.
It's like, "Oh my gosh." And so he's like, "It's okay, mama." I'm like, "It's okay. I just need the tears to like just explaining." You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And we got home and he told my husband, he was like, "He's crying in the car." Like, and then my husband like thought that something had happened, like I had talked to that person and he's like, "What happened? What?" And I was like, "Nothing. It was just the emotions were coming and I just let them come." And he was like, "Okay." And like he knows like
Yeah,
emotional
totally.
I process that way. You don't have to always process that way, but I think it's so beautiful. Just a 3-year-old, they understand more than you think. So explaining things to them as they're happening, like it's okay. It's okay. And it
Yeah.
allows your child to see like that's okay. And
Mhm.
expressing emotions and talking about things that hurt is really important. Sorry, I just soapbox
Yeah.
for a second, but I think that it's beautiful.
No, but I think that's so accurate, right? Like, there's like a time and a place and like you couldn't hold those emotions in and that's okay that like, Rafi saw you cry. It's like I never saw my parents show, any big emotions. It was always like kind of hidden and like don't share it with the kids because what are they going to think? And I'm like, I feel like I would have been so much more, I would be in less therapy for sure if like, you know what I mean? If
Totally.
like that was something that was a little bit more open in my family. And I've done that too, where I'm like, there's been times where I'm going through something really challenging, and then all of a sudden I'm just like crying, and then arrows there, and it's like, you know what, I need to get all my sad out right now. And I'm just feeling really sad, and it has nothing to do with you, and you don't have to fix it, but I just feel really sad right now, and I need to cry, and that's okay. Because we're not, like having like happiness and joy isn't the only emotion we feel as humans. And so when our kids can see us in a state of like, sadness or mourning, it's like that also informs them. How do we work through this
Yeah.
as people when we get bigger, you know?
Well, and it's so interesting. I did a webinar with Anne Salazar, the herbalist, a couple weeks ago,
Hmm.
and we were talking how it's important to like introduce different flavors to your children, like
Hmm.
bitter, sour, aromatic, like all these different things besides just salty and sweet,
Yeah.
so that it informs their palate. And so if they get sick and they need to take a lot of herbal medicinals, if you're going the natural route, are gonna be bitter. They're gonna be like interesting.
Strong. Yeah.
Like, but they
Hmm.
work really well. And if you're like going the holistic route or just kind of dabbling in it a little bit, it's important for your kid to like understand that like everything is not salty and sweet. And so this is the
Totally.
same thing. It's
Hmm.
important for us to understand as adults that are still kids sometimes, our inner child, and our children to understand the wide range of emotions and that they're all okay,
Hmm.
all of them.
Yeah.
How we deal with them can sometimes be not okay.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's when like when people are dealing with emotions inappropriately, that even sounds like a weird thing to say inappropriately, or incorrectly, but you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that's when it gets toxic and that's when it's like, oh, anger is bad. Like don't be angry. Don't express anger. Well, like, no, do please, because
Yeah.
anger when it's held in sorrow, when it's like these things can cause cancer.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
I'm not lying. The studies are out there. And we knew this before then, but like it's kind of cool that science is catching up, you know?
100%. Yeah.
Lizzie, I had one more question about the um Oh, okay. So when it comes to um miscarriages, and I know with yours, it wasn't like a miscarriage after miscarriage, and the second time you were trying to get pregnant. Um, but I think that, and I don't know if you experience this, but I do think that a lot of women experience shame
Mhm.
when it comes to miscarriage, because my body's not doing what it should.
Mhm.
I have a uterus, I have ovaries. This is what my body should naturally do, just like breathing and digesting food. And that shame element that comes in, and the, like, you just touched on it a little bit, um, but you were like, I didn't dwell on the what I did wrong kind of a thing, and that shame and that. And I think that sometimes that
Mhm.
shame can inform people of what kind of decision they're going to make to not tell
Mhm.
people. And then it becomes like, but then I feel like that just holds in more, especially if you've experienced multiple
Yeah.
just trying to get pregnant. Um, so
Yeah, I mean, I can only imagine like how defeating and like how challenging that would be to have like multiple miscarriages like back to back and like the stories that would, come to you and those narratives that would come to you. Because I mean, I think because we don't aren't really open with miscarriages, we get it's isolating. And so then we tell ourselves this story about ourselves of like, maybe I shouldn't have gone to like done X, Y, and Z, or maybe I should have stayed home, or I shouldn't have been working so hard, or I had this really hard conversation with somebody that did that stress me out too much. And sometimes it's like we don't get to know why. And that's kind of like part of the mystery of, our babies coming into the world. It's like we don't get to know like why, how, or when they come in.
mhm,
And that's like the one last kind of like mystery there is. And it also pertains to like miscarriages too. We don't get to choose how long they come in for, or maybe even be a part of, was it something you did? Probably not. It was probably just your body innately knowing that for whatever reason,
so I was
this
born.
baby was, yeah, this baby was just meant to be here for only a couple of weeks. And, so it is really challenging, but I think talking more and more about, um, you know, just being more open about, having the miscarriages, your journey, your fertility journey will help other people in taking that shame and that, those feelings that can overwhelm us and then we become isolated. And when we become isolated, then we don't share our stories and we're not connecting as a community because this is just so common for so many of us. She's like, I hit my limit being quiet.
We're almost done. No,
Yeah.
and I do. I think that there's a difference between isolation and having that space. Like you needed some space for yourself for a little bit, and then Josie came over and stuff like that. And the isolation in and of itself energetically is a stagnant thing.
Hmm.
In us, it's stagnant in our emotions and our heart and spirit. So we're not saying that everybody should always tell people right when they're pregnant or even when they miscarriage, but just food for thought.
Hmm.
Is this something that pertains to you? Are there some close people around you that you can tell right away? Even with I have a lot of sisters, but one of my sisters, she's pregnant with her fourth,
Hmm.
um, and she tells everybody immediately, like the moment she pees on a stick. I think she calls my parents, or maybe a couple days. Like, but she
Yeah.
tells people, it's so beautiful because she I'm like, oh like the first time she got pregnant, I was like, don't, it's not, you should, it's like, why are
Yeah,
you doing this? And she's like,
totally.
this is, and I'm like, that's, and knowing now what I know, like even more, and with your story, I'm like, how beautiful is that?
Yeah.
Beautiful, and that people could be there for them, and for you. So just food for thought. It might be something you want to do, so we can just kind of open these channels. And it doesn't have to be the whole world, but maybe some close family, close friends, when you're ready, like on Instagram, if that's kind of what your jam is, you could be.
Yeah.
Anyways, we are at our limit, but thank you so
Oh,
much.
yeah.
If you missed our postpartum talk last week, it is right on our YouTube channel. I'm going to be sending everybody emails out. And thank you so much, Sophia. That was amazing. I think that I hope that that helps heal a lot inside women that have experienced this as well.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And yeah, I mean, if you have any questions or concerns or anything, feel free to reach out to either of us. Maria is so knowledgeable about so many different things, especially postpartum. And then I'm always here for postpartum care as well, especially if you're local to San Diego.
Yeah. And if not, we can help you find somebody in your area that is.
Hmm. Yeah.
Oh, bye. Bye, Arrow.
Bye.
Okay, stop recording.